Hi, I'm Roberta. Welcome to my kitchen. Today we're in Indonesia and I'm going to show you how to make probably the most classic Indonesian condiment called Sambal Terasi. Now sambal is a chili paste and one of my favourites is sambal olek, which is really just chilies and salt. Sambal Terasi takes it a step further. Of course there's chilies, that's essential. There's a little garlic and shallot and a little bit of tomato, and then of course the terasi component. Now terasi is that very pungent Indonesian shrimp paste, virtually the same as Malaysian belacan, and that's actually what I'm using. When I went to my Indonesian grocery store and asked for terasi, this is what they gave me. So if you have belacan, it's perfect. Thai gapi, similar but a little bit different. So belacan or terasi is what you want. You need to toast it before you use it, and we do have a separate video on that, which I shot with David Thompson, toasting guppy. Just wrap it up in some foil over a flame or in a pan. A couple of other things. I don't like to be too prescriptive about measurements when I'm making things, but I've given you exact weights in this recipe, because if I say use 10 red chilies, small red chilies can be that big or that big. Interestingly, these ones are generally much fierier. So for this quantity, I've said 30 to 40 grams. If you're using big ones like this, go 40 grams because they're milder. If you're using these fierce little guys, I reckon pull it back to 30 grams, unless you're a total chili freak, in which case, do what you want. Another word on storage, belacan. It comes wrapped in paper. I re-wrap it, and I've had this one in the fridge for over a year. Then I put it back in, which is so strong, back into that wrapper and then inside a plastic bag. And I find that works fine. I can't smell it now until I take it out of the plastic bag. I'm going to pound this paste because every now and then I just like to feel like I'm an authentic cook. But of course you could do it in a food processor, which is how I make most of my spice pastes. Don't tell David Thompson. Let me pull the tops off these while we talk. What else do you need to know? Sambal terasi is typically made in small quantities, fresh for every meal. Sometimes these ingredients are just pounded without any cooking. That's acceptable. But typically they are fried off first and then pounded. And in a third version, they're fried off, pounded, and then that pounded paste is cooked again. But we're just doing the middle version, where we're going to cook these down just a little bit, caramelize some of the sugars. If you've got one or two green ones, they're fine, pop them into, and then pound it up. So it really is still quite a fresh and vibrant paste. There's our chilies. Shallot, I'm just going to cut in half and peel. Garlic, we're going to fry that whole. I'll just get the skin off that, so we'll just bruise that enough to be able to peel it. And our tomatoes, I'm just going to chop them up. I'm using grape tomatoes. If you've cooked with me before, you know I often do. I just find they're the ripest all year round. And these ones are beautiful and ripe. So they're going to break down quite nicely. So we'll just give them a quarter, maybe an eighth for the big ones. Collect all that juice. We want that to go into the pan as well. They all go in at different times, so we'll put them on different containers, and let's go to the stove and start cooking. So once it starts to sizzle, keep it moving. We want to get it a little bit of colour all over. So after a couple of minutes, you can see we've started to get a bit of colour there. In with our chilies and garlic, and have a splatter guard ready, because they pop a bit like popcorn, I've discovered, and it can get quite messy. So let's just give them another minute or so. If you don't have a splatter guard, just use a lid. Just have something handy so you don't end up wearing the oil. Now after another minute or so, it will stop spitting, which is a good sign that it's ready for the tomato, which may spit again. We'll just give that another minute until that tomato's soft. It might not even take a minute, 30 seconds, and then we're ready to pound. So here we have our lovely fried shallot, chilli, garlic and tomato in there. Get all of that oil in because there's lots of flavour there. And give the base of the pan a good scrape because there's also lots of lovely flavour there in those caramelised bits. A little bit of salt and gula jawa, palm sugar. They're abrasive, so they'll help break everything down. And now we grind. And thankfully, unlike Thai, which is very much about pounding, I find the Indonesian pastes are more about grinding, which is a lot easier on the wrist. So you might have to give it an occasional pound to break down some of those chili skins and tomato skins, but generally grinding. There we are. The other good thing about doing it in the mortar and pestle is you don't want this to be a super smooth paste. It's meant to be quite coarse, so that's my excuse anyway. In with the terasi, just give that another little grind to mix that in. It is amazing how that has quite an offensive smell until you toast it, and then, even though it's still strong, it's quite pleasant, more or less. And a little lime juice. Now you can taste it, you can add more salt, more sugar, more lime juice if you like. I know this is the ratio that pleases me, but every cook would make this differently. Now sambal terasi is served like achar, almost at every meal. It's used as an ingredient in some dishes, and I think in West Sumatra it's also used as a dip for raw vegetables, like a variation on gado-gado. Without the peanut sauce, they use the sambal terasi instead. There we go. So we just stir that lime juice in and we're good to go. Sambal terasi. Make it like a good Indonesian cook would, regularly. I'm not going to say make it at every meal. I make up a batch and keep it for a week or so, but unlike some condiments, you don't want to keep it for a month. You probably only want to keep it for a few days to a week. And use the food processor if that makes it easier. I find it's quicker to wash up the mortar and pestle than the food processor for such a small quantity. There we go. Sambal terasi. Serve it with everything. Enjoy.